What's up, robot builders? So today what we want to talk about is one of the companies that has continuously made an impact on the industry, and that is Boston Dynamics. So Boston Dynamics really got started with this guy. This is Mark Raybert. Mark Raybert was originally the founder of the MIT Leg Lab, which was a research group inside of MIT that was interested in how humans walked and replicating how that happened. They originally started out by using very simple robots with just a single leg that were balanced by external rods, but they were doing it as a way to determine and model how walking actually worked. In 1992, Raybert left MIT in order to found Boston Dynamics. From 1992 to about 2004, we don't know exactly what Boston Dynamics was working on, even though we know that most of it was military related, and of course it had to do with walking machines. In 2006, Boston Dynamics released its first video online of the Rise robot. Rise robot was really basically just kind of a gecko. It looked like a lizard for just climbing trees and walls. It had very sharp spikes on the ends of its feet so that it could grab onto rough surfaces. It was basically just kind of a way of demonstrating that a robot could climb a vertical surface. In 2009, we saw the very first video of Big Dog. And Big Dog is really kind of the robot that Boston Dynamics is best known for. It has 4 legs, it's walking around, and a lot of guys kicked it a lot. End robot abuse! But soon after that, we got another video that showed that they had been working on Big Dog since 2004, and you were able to see the evolution of how that design changed as they worked on it. From the very early large-footed kind of janky design. It really was a janky design. I mean, you look at it and you're like, wow, that is tough. And now you look at the robots today and they look very elegant. But in 2009, in addition to the Big Dog robot, we also saw that they were working on a smaller version called the Little Dog that basically looked kind of like a Chihuahua of like, when you're thinking of like military robots, it's not something that you'd really consider like, ooh yeah, that's a military killing machine. Though it's important to note that almost none of Boston Dynamics robots were ever meant to be weapons. They were always cargo carrying mechanisms for helping out infantry in the field. There was never a really true demonstration of using a weapon on any of these. Unless you consider that one time they put horns on it, but that doesn't really count. But in 2009, we also saw that Boston Dynamics was not only working on 4-legged robots, they were also working on 2-legged robots. We saw the very first picture of Petman, which was a 2-legged robot walking basically down a track. And this was impressive because at the time there really were not very many 2-legged robots that were walking through dynamic means. If you're confused about what I mean by dynamic balancing, it's the way that humans walk. When we are walking, we are basically falling forward and just keeping our legs in front of us. Many robots designed today, and many of like the hobby kits or robots in general, don't use dynamic balance. They're more like a moving structure where they very carefully make sure that if at any time they freeze, they will still stand there. Whereas a dynamic robot, if at any time it stops or freezes, it is going to fall over. So that's what I mean by dynamic balance when we're talking about this stuff. In 2011, we saw the Alpha Dog, which was a DARPA project in order to create an even larger version of the Big Dog that could be used for carrying even larger cargoes. We also saw at that time a full version of the Petman, and the Petman was designed and funded by DARPA as a way to test uniforms. If you're trying to test and verify that a uniform will be good over the full lifetime of the soldier, there's one way you can do it. You can have some guy wear it his whole life and be moving around in it, or you can design a robot that can walk around inside the uniform and see where the wear places are. The point is that robot has to walk like a human. That is what Petman did and was designed to do. In 2012, we got videos of all kinds of other projects that Boston Dynamics was working on, really as ways of kind of moving cameras around. You had the R-Hex, which was a 6-legged robot that was for getting over very tough terrains. It was very different from the other robots that Boston Dynamics had designed before because it didn't use normal legs. It had basically spinning legs that were sort of one-legged wheels, if you can describe it as such. But you also had the Sand Flea. And the Sand Flea was another robot that had 4 wheels, but it also had 2 legs on the back for popping it up on top of buildings. It was a jumping robot. And both of these are very clearly applications for putting cameras into places where it's hard to put cameras. At the time, there were a lot of different robots being designed for the military as a way of putting cameras into a dangerous situation so that soldiers would not have to get into that dangerous situation. And Sand Flea and R-Hex were very clear demonstrations of this goal. In September 2012, we also saw the first look of the LS3. And the LS3 was basically the continuation of the Alpha Dog prototype that was created back in 2011. Just was more finalized, much bigger, much stronger, much more reliable. At this point, there's a very interesting shift in Boston Dynamics because they go from basically being a research firm to being an actual company making product. They're purchased by Google in 2013 when Google buys a whole bunch of robot companies. In 2013, we saw the release of Wildcat, which was another variation of quadruped robots. We also saw the release of the cheetah, which at the time was the fastest quadruped robot ever created. We also saw the first time that they decided to put an arm onto one of their walking robots with putting an arm onto Big Dog. And we finally saw the new development from the work that they had done in Petman with the release of the very first Atlas. And Atlas is what everybody kind of compares to Terminator, even though the Atlas robots very early on could not do much more than walk across rough surfaces. However, in 2015, Boston Dynamics had their Big Dog project canceled by the military because it was deemed that the robots were too noisy. And the reason the robots were too noisy is because Boston Dynamics has always had their robots be controlled by some kind of hydraulic actuation. And in order to power that for a very long time, the only way you could do it was with a gasoline engine. And the gasoline engines that were on Boston Dynamics robots were not silent. So they ended up having their military contract canceled, but it was okay because they were working on other projects at that time. In the same year, we saw the release of the Spot and the Spot Mini, which was basically a version of the robot that had a dedicated arm designed for it. And we started to see the applications for these robots in an industrial consumer setting. In 2016, we saw the new version of the Atlas created. The old Atlas had been used in the DARPA Robotics Challenge, and no doubt Boston Dynamics had been able to learn from that experience and develop a new, sleeker version that could almost be used in a warehouse. And they had demonstrations of that kind of thing. But at this point, Google was kind of stepping back from its robotics goals, and they decided to sell Boston Dynamics to SoftBank, which was a Chinese-based venture firm. But this doesn't mean that Boston Dynamics was stopping innovating or didn't have anything going on under the hood. In 2017, during the sale, we saw the first look of Handle, which was the first time that Boston Dynamics kind of combined all the different disjointed aspects of the types of robots they had built into a single hodgepodge disjointed robot. Though still really impressive, Handle was a demonstration of how legged robots and wheeled robots could be combined to create an entirely new type of mechanism and application. In the end of 2017, we also saw that the Spot Mini had been changed to basically be a very consumer-looking, yellow-covered, painted robot that looked like a real finished product. Before that, all of Boston Dynamics robots had always kind of been poorly refined. They didn't have a lot of coverings, and they didn't really have a finished product look. They looked like industrial machines. In 2018, Boston Dynamics has an intent to begin manufacturing of the Spot Mini to get it out into applications in the real world. They are testing those very real applications right now, including testing in construction sites around the world, as well as building the development and the modules and attachments that allow these robots to be useful in an industrial setting. If you're interested in joining the Boston Dynamics team, absolutely. Become an electrical engineer, a machine learning engineer, a CNC machinist, or a mechanical engineer, because those are all kinds of people that they are looking for there at Boston Dynamics right now. But if you're looking for a slightly simpler project or something to just mess around with robotics, you can always check out the Little Bots at littlearmrobot.com, where we have all of these kits available for programming and for building. So thanks everybody, hopefully you enjoyed this story of where Boston Dynamics came from. Comment down below with any kind of parts or facts you might know about Boston Dynamics or other companies that you would like us to take a look at. Also make sure that you subscribe and like this video.